Hello and thank you for joining the last edition of Journalist Hangout this week, reaching you from our studios in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. I'm Ayodele Uzubakun. Today on the program, Vice President Shettima hails Adoke, says former AGF stopped former President Jonathan from sacking him as governor of Borno State. Chief of Army Staff briefs media executive on war, efforts and challenges, says victory is assured with the support of Nigerians. And later in the show, determined to achieve multimodal transport ecosystem and make Enugu State an aviation and logistic hub, Governor Peter Mba launches the state-owned airline, Enugu Air. I'll be hanging out with the maestro himself, Babajide Kolade Utitoju, and Dr. Majid Dahiru. So if you're ready, let the hangout start now. Thank you for staying with us. Jide, before we go to today's business proper, now the certified true copy of the Federal High Court judgment just came out today. Yes. And since yesterday, we've been getting, not too conflicting signal about this judgment. Can you just put the record straight on what the Federal High Court said?
The CTC affirmed what we had been saying on this program since that judgment was handed down. One, that the court never made an order for Natasha, the senator, to be recalled. The judge just expressed an opinion that punishment should be proportional to the offense committed. And in the opinion of the judge, 6 months suspension for what Senator Natasha did was disproportionate. That was her opinion. But she didn't give a consequential order that the Senate should immediately recall her. We said repeatedly that those accounts in a section of the Nigerian media constitute a figment of the imagination of the authors. But people won't listen. Some of our friends who have taken a position, you see them on social media making a lot of noise about what the judge didn't say. You see lawyers, you see trained lawyers without shame going to TV stations to analyze and say things that the judge never said. So today, the seat, and I said this, I even told one of my friends who is based in the US, we communicate on social media. I told him that the CTC will never be in contradistinction of what was said in open court. He continued to argue with me. But today, the CTC is out. The judge never made an order that she should be recalled. The judge affirmed that the rules of the Senate must be complied with by Senator Natasha. And it's clear why the judge took that decision. She doesn't want it to seem like an arm of government is interfering in the affairs of another arm of government. So it's clear now Senator Natasha will proceed on appeal and the Senate will cross-appeal. Another thing Nigerians do not know is that when they say you are suspended for so number of days in the National Assembly, they are talking about legislative days. The days that the legislature sits. It is not like our own, when I say 3 days, you and I know what we are talking about, normal working days. No, that's not what they have in mind. It is legislative days. So the suspension could actually be longer than we are imagining. So this is the position of the court, that the Senate rule is superior and only the Senate can recall Natasha once she abides by the Senate rules. That is what's contained in the CTC.
Wow. All right. Now, the need for Nigerians to be more united irrespective of tribe and political affiliations have been stressed. The Vice President of Nigeria, Kashim Shettima, reiterated this at a well-attended public presentation of a book authored by the former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mohammed Adoke, in Abuja. Vice President Shettima praised Adoke for preventing his removal as Borno State Governor by former President Goodluck Jonathan. He said Jonathan mooted the idea of his removal as one of the stubborn governors at the meeting of the Federal Executive Council, FEC, but Adoke prevailed on him to shelve the idea. This has been making news.
My brother was there live, so it starts.
Now, yesterday, this morning, I took my time, I went online, I saw the video of the Vice President talking, and as of today, his senior special assistant on media actually made that clarification that they were not referring to what is happening in the country today. And can you please just shed light on this? Because a lot of people, they've been going online to say, Vice President said that, and it was like indirectly indicting what Mr. President did in Rivers State.
No, I think it was completely taken out of context because I was there. I was a member of the organizing committee of that event, and I played a very prominent role. And I was not just there, I was in close proximity to the VP when he was even speaking. And let me say this. The Vice President simply shared his personal experience as governor at a time that was very trying for Nigerians when the Boko Haram insurgency was, on the upsurge. The Chibok girls were kidnapped, and there was such a confusion around what exactly is responsible for this insurgency. No. And as a governor that was in the theater of war, he was trying to draw the attention of federal authorities. So one, the issue responsible for Boko Haram, that it was not political, it was more of religious, and also trying to draw the attention to the fact that the army wasn't, as at that time, well equipped to tackle what we are confronted with. And the authorities in Abuja took it as
going against
politicians. I mean, as if he was the one stoking it, to the extent that he was accused of being responsible for the kidnapping of Chibok girls. So there was this back and forth between him and the federal authorities. If you recall, the former president threatened to withdraw security from Borno if he thinks they're not doing enough. So it was within that context that concerns of national security also was, in the mix. And there was the idea that a state of emergency should be declared in Borno that would include the suspension or the removal of the governor. So when that was brought to the FEC, the then Attorney General, as he rightly said, well, the law does not necessarily support the removal of a governor by a president. So he was simply reliving his own experience. And let me say this. This is the second time he's saying this publicly. In 2017, he was not the vice president then. He was just a senator. But he was the chairman of another book launching at the same venue. And this time it was a book written by Bola Jabilahi, who was then the spokesperson for the APC.
Now the ADC spokesperson.
Exactly, on a platter of gold. It was also a chronicle of his own experience during the Jonathan era. And in that book, he also highlighted the role that Adoke played as somebody who was, a constitutional conformist. And the VP, the now VP, who was then senator then, also repeated the same story. It's on record. If you Google it, you will see it now. Where he said the same thing he said yesterday about the fact that this man saved my job.
Yes.
It was a personal, experience that he was simply reliving as a tribute to a friend who has gone through a lot in the course of his own public service career. And let me say this. He did not talk about state of... If I didn't even contextualize his removal within the idea of state of emergency, he didn't want to use that word. He didn't say the status of emergency was wrong and that that was the basis of which he was not removed. So he was simply sharing an experience and tribute to a friend who was in power, who had the opportunity to have sided with those who wanted to remove him. He used the word remove from power and did not. That was all what it was about. Now, nothing more than that.
Jude, once, I won't say mischief makers, but Nigerians, that they've been hearing of the so-called frustrated relationship between Mr. President and the Vice President. Now, for the Vice President to choose this time to cite this example, don't you think some people might be reading down the line, reading meanings to this?
Yes, but as I've
because
said,
we still have an emergency going on in Rivers State right now.
Yes, but we know that it's just a matter of time. Fubara will be back at
September.
Work. The president hosted them to a meeting. The president presided over a meeting where the contending parties agreed to sheath their swords So the matter of rivers will very soon be water under the bridge. It will be a forgotten issue. The thing about intellectuals is they speak from their minds and they like to recall events with tremendous accuracy. Vice President Shettima is one of the greatest readers that I know in our country, consumes books like as if his life depends on it. So he's an intellectual. The way an intellectual speaks is not the way the average politician speaks. He was just trying to recall to the hearing of people the favor that Adoke did to him. Adoke stopped his removal. Not suspension, his removal. I see people on social media even saying there's no difference between removal and suspension. That is what we have degenerated into. That people will say there's no difference between both words. Anyone who will say there's no difference between those words has no business claiming that he went to school. No business at all. So, Vice President Shettima was just trying to let people know that, during those giddy days, when the Vice President and President Jonathan at that time were at loggerheads, this was the person, along with Tambuwal, who stepped in and said, no, don't do this, you shouldn't do this. And of course, a president will respect the opinion of his Attorney General. That is the most senior minister in government. And that is the only position that a president is not permitted to outsource to anyone. The president can brush aside his Minister of Information, but his Attorney General, no.
Specified in the Constitution.
You cannot outsource his job or delegate his job to anyone. So the president will listen to his Attorney General. Adoke used that position to save Shettima's job. And he was grateful to it. He was only expressing it. People will say, it was wrong to express it given that this matter is still there. But it is because some people have made up their minds to make a mountain out of a molehill, to create a storm out of a teacup. I've said it that this president has not told anyone that he wants to replace his deputy. And the people that I speak to in government, no one has told me that, Mr. President has made up his mind, though, Shettima is not going to contest with him. I was in Kaduna for the Army Day celebration. As I was going, I was stopped. As I was stepping out of the place, I was stopped. Our correspondent, Lupe Asom, was with me. They stopped me. They surrounded me. And they started saying, look, Governor Ubasani, 4 more years. President Tinubu with Shettima is deputy. 4 more years. They were saying, I have it on video to tell you that even the masses, this is what the masses want. I have it on video. If you request me to play it, I will play it. This is the ordinary people on the streets of Kaduna expressing their views. Some people, there will always be disagreements between people, between leaders. You and I have disagreed in the past. If we love one another, we cannot always agree with one another. So if there's disagreement, there's no reason for people to try to magnify it. The Vice President made some comments. He was only recalling what happened, how somebody saved his job. He wasn't referring to the present. And let me quote what the statement emanating from the Vice President's office. He said, without mincing words, the action of Mr. President in suspending Mr. Fubara and others from exercising the functions of office averted the governor's outright removal. To conflate suspension with removal is misleading. Therefore, interpreting Senator Shettima's remarks as commentary on current events is either a willful misrepresentation or a deliberate neglect of constitutional contest. And the statement says that Vice President Shettima aligns wholeheartedly with the decision that the president took
Okay.
Publicly now, they've laid that to rest, that this vice president is loyal to his boss, is not in conflict or in disagreement with the decision that the president has taken, and that the vice president office affirmed that the president did not remove, he only suspended to stop the looming threat of impeachment by the state legislators, to bring stability and calm to the state. So they've affirmed now that the vice president does not disagree
with Mr. President
on this matter. In fact, if I were to go on, you see how the statement affirmed that for this reason and that reason, the vice president believed with the National Assembly that it was the right decision to take. Unless the VP comes out today now to say, no, I didn't authorize that press statement. But this is a statement that he authorized. It means that he does not see anything wrong in the statement of emergency that was declared by.
I think this has thrown more lights.
No, it's one government. Again, the occasion in question was not a place to come and debate what was constitutional or what wasn't constitutional. Somebody has written his memoir. It was being presented publicly, and the VP, as a good friend of the author, came to say, look, I attest to his strength of character and the fact that when he was a boy, he had the courage to guide his principal. Again, the controversy surrounding the purported attempt to remove him then was highly political, but it was also mixed with national security. And it was a challenge between him as governor and the president. And so it was a completely different context. Yes. And let me also say this. I do not think that there is a rancor between the president and his vice. There is none. Because even up until last week, the president was still delegating on one assignment or the other, including some important assignments as serving as emissary to very important places in this part of the world. And most importantly, to remember how this journey of the Tinubu Shettima presidency started from this studio, publicly. Shettima was an avowed apostle of power shift to the South for the purpose of fairness, equity, and justice. Avowed. That was when he earned my respect as a Nigerian, because I was also on that part of the divide. And as soon as he sensed that there was an attempt to scuttle power shift to the South by bringing a northerner that was his next door neighbor, and I'm talking about the former Senate President, Ahmed Lawan, Shettima came on this studio and went around other studios to make sure that that attempt to scuttle power shift to the South was nipped in the bud immediately. It's like he shattered the table. I said this because when he didn't do it because he was being vice president. He was simply doing what was right. And at the end of the day, naturally, he benefited from the effort of his own hands. So if a man can support a cause that benefited the president at the end of the day, and the region, and the country at large, because our nationality was preserved beyond 2023, I do not think you have any reason today to want to go against the interest of his principal. So I think those that are trying to create that schism between the two of them should please rest, because Shettima is not just supportive and loyal, he's an intellectual politician that Nigeria needs his services now and in the future.
So finally, on this, busybody should go and look for.
Yes, yes. I think a few things have been misunderstood. Senator Aliun Dume, being from his state, constantly criticizing the administration for reasons best known to him.
It's always been like that.
Governor Zulum, at a time of serious security breaches, coming out, shouting to say, no, we need to put greater accent on Borno State. We are neglecting Borno and trying to secure the Northwest. And then some of the earlier remarks of Governor Zulum made some people to start thinking, maybe it is Shettima that is sending in. Maybe all these things that Ndume is saying. What people do not know is that if Ndume speaks his mind, he does not need anybody to prod him. And I don't think Ndume is really that close to the vice president. Those who are close to them will testify to this. So seeing the vice president as disloyal because of the comments of Ndume or because of some of the remarks that Governor Zulum has made, I don't think it's right. I've said it before that Governor Zulum and co will help the cause of the vice president by limiting some of these public criticism. When they have access to the president, they can talk to the president. Because when you have access to look at when somebody wanted the governor of Abia State to say certain things about President Tinubu, he said, no, I will not say it. I have access to him. So that is what I expect Governor Zulum to imbibe. So that it does not reflect badly on
his predecessor,
his political godfather. That is the vice president. Because that's the way people are interpreting it. Whether we like it or me, I will speak my mind, I will say the truth. This is the way people are interpreting it. But it's unfair to interpret the remarks of adults as having been sponsored
responsible
by the vice president. So those people I think they will help the vice president's cause by
turning down,
especially the governor. I'm not talking about the men. So
it's set in his own
path. But especially the governor. So that this thing does not escalate beyond this point.
Okay.